John, I think, should be remembered as a person who did something and who can inspire you to do something.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Brick episode. Today we are going to be discussing the incredible, powerful, influential, amazing legacy of John Lewis. Today we have an incredible guest with us, Susan Ross, who knew him and knew him well.
I'm Susan Ross. Most people call me Sue. I am, a lot of people know me as a photographer. I kind of was an unofficial City Hall photographer for many years, but I'm also a business development specialist. So I've worked with the city's minority and female business program. I just retired from there actually for about the last 30, 35, 36 years. But I knew John before I was at City Hall. I knew John initially because of his activities with SNCC. I grew up in Atlanta during the Civil Rights Movement. And during that time, we lived next door to Julian Bond's father. And so we would frequently meet the folks from SNCC at Dr. Bond's house. And they would all, everyone wanted to come over for dinner and have dinner, get a good meal before they got back on the road doing things. And so, most of them were 10, 15 years older than me, but we enjoyed hearing the stories of what they were doing in SNCC, where they were going in Mississippi or Alabama or Southwest Georgia. And so we would, that was kind of my initial introduction to John was through as being one of Julian's friends. And then later, when I was in college, I had the opportunity to work with his wife, Lillian. Lillian was the librarian and archivist at the Atlanta University Library. And as a summer job, as an intern, I got to work with Lillian, and we were what would be called digitizing the collection back then, but it was really preparing they had a Negro collection of books that were all out of print at that time, books by Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and all, and they were being copied onto microfiches, which are I don't even know if they have microfiche machines anymore, but that's what we were preparing the collection to do. So I worked with Lillian on that a couple of summers, and so also got to know him as a husband and a father, and as a good guy. Then after SNCC, John ran the voter education project, and they did voter registration activities all around the South. And after that, sometime after that, John ran for the Atlanta City Council and became a council member. And that was while Andy Young was mayor. And I worked in Andy Young's administration. That was the first administration that I worked in full time. And so got to know John as a council member. And then later, when he ran for Congress, and got to know him as a national, he became a national figure after that. Well, he was a national.
Really quick, if could we backtrack just for a quick moment for our listeners who may not know what SNCC is? Could you explain it a little?
Certainly. SNCC is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and it was the arm of students who most of them dropped out of college and to work in the movement. And Dr. Martin Luther King was with SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and most of the older ministers were, they were young men at the time, but they were part of that. But SNCC was a student-led organization, and it was founded at Shaw University in Raleigh 60 years ago. They're actually if you're really interested in SNCC, you can attend. There's going to be a virtual reunion of SNCC. It was supposed to be this year, but it had to be postponed until next year. So it'll be next April. So look out for that. There'll be a lot of information on it coming up. And also SNCC is working with several, the SNCC veterans are working with several organizations of young people to mobilize the vote and to teach the kind of basic techniques of community organizing, which they pioneered back in the 60s. Many people may be familiar with Freedom Summer. There was a documentary done on it not too long ago, and it was when college students from all across the country went to Mississippi to do voter education and voter registration and fighting to get people the right to vote at that time.
Kind of like what reminisce does now.
Yeah, John was the national chairman of SNCC. Mm-hmm.
We love something that started at Shaw University, one of our oldest HBCUs in the state. So nice little plug for them. And Bob Hall did a lot of work with SNCC as well, our founder. So yeah, so we have a good history with SNCC, and SOC, I think, is the other version, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think a lot of what we do at MNC really connects a lot to the foundation and purpose of SNCC. So that's a cool little that connection. That's the word. So you talked a little bit about your history and how you met John and really got to know him. So can you elaborate a little bit on who he was as a person? You mentioned that he was a great father and a great husband, but what exactly does that mean to you?
Well, what does that mean? It means somebody to whom family is important. You have kind of sometimes absentee fathers that are kind of there, are around. But I mean, as a person that takes, he had a great partnership with Lillian, and she really was, in many ways, the backbone behind a lot of his campaigns and activities over the last 40 years. And she passed a few years ago, but she was a quiet, very powerful kind of force in terms of organizing and she was originally from California, and she had moved to Atlanta in the early 60s. And Zernona Clayton, who is now the head of the Trumpet Awards Foundation, but was then an executive assistant to Martin Luther King, was the matchmaker, because she didn't think too much of the guys Lillian was dating, and she said, I like this guy John, and he's kind of quiet, but I think this will work. And she set up a date for them, a New Year's Eve date for them at her house, and it worked. So she spoke about that at his memorial service at Ebenezer. Yeah.
What a beautiful story. I love that. What is one of your favorite memories of him, whether it be personal or just something that he's done? What do you cherish about him and a good memory?
Well, I was able to go to John every year would take people from Washington, usually groups of congressmen and senators, to Selma for the Bloody Sunday anniversary, which is the first weekend in March every year. And he wanted to make sure they were exposed to the things that were important in his formation as a leader. And of course, Bloody Sunday was where the people of Selma marched across the bridge, led by John Lewis and Jose Williams, and were met on the other side of the bridge by a sea of police who told them to stop and then charged and beat them unmercifully. And this was one of the key factors that led to the passing of the Civil Rights Bill, because all of America was able to see the brutality that was unleashed on these demonstrators. And John was badly beaten, Miss Amelia Boynton Robinson was also beaten, Jose Williams, and many of the other SNCC veterans that were there. But they, Martin Luther King was not there that weekend, the Bloody Sunday weekend, but he came back and led the march to complete the journey. And that whole process brought national attention to the need to pass the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts. So John would take people there every year, and there would be a celebration. But the 50th anniversary happened while Barack Obama was president. And that was a very special occasion. So that's one of my favorite memories is being there, just in the crowd, not anywhere up special or anything like that. Being there and seeing John speak and introducing America's first Black president on the very site where he had been beaten so badly, 50 years before that. So that's a favorite memory. But I think he did quite a bit to keep alive what really happened during the Civil Rights Movement. A lot of people kind of sugarcoat it and coat it over, but it was a very brutal struggle, a very serious struggle. And that's why it's important that, people fought and people were beaten and some people died for the right for us to vote. And so it's very important for us to treasure that, to treasure our right to vote.
Bloody Sunday was a terrible day, which is an understatement. But that, I can't imagine how much that must have meant for him to walk beside Barack Obama on that bridge on that day. Yeah. Like that, wow. Just to think about that. And I wasn't even there in any capacity, and he was there for both of them.
Well, luckily it's captured photographically, and it's captured on video, so that everybody can see that moment. And if you look at the documentary that was just done on John, you can see it in there. But John and Jose and those were some very brave people. I mean, to know, John didn't think he was going to be beaten that day. He thought he was going to be taken to jail. He had a backpack on. If you look at the pictures, you'll see he had a little backpack where he had a book and his toothbrush and some fruit. And because he knew, in jail, you need to take stuff with you or else you won't have any. And so he was expecting to be arrested. I mean, John was arrested, many, many times in civil rights marches and in freedom rides. And so he and he's been in all kinds of jails, but he wasn't expecting to be beaten. He wasn't expecting the fierceness of the police that day. And it was just, if you look at the videos of it, you can just see that it was totally unexpected to them. They had been peaceably marching, and the brutality that was unleashed on them was just immense. And I mean, police were on horses and they were beating them with clubs, and it was it really was a turning point in American history because of the power of the media, because of the power of people to actually see this happening and know that we have to change the way that this is happening.
It caused a clear shift because, you hear about it and it's like, okay, I can shove it to the side, but actually watching it happen is a completely different story.
Yeah. And that was before we had, 24-hour news. You got news once a day at about 6 o'clock at the dinner hour. And for that to come over people's TVs, to see that brutality, people, it moved people to want to make a difference.
I think that in a similar way, I think George Floyd might have done a similar thing where, that was something you could not ignore.
Right.
So,
John cited that in his last op-ed that was published in the New York Times the day of his funeral. He said that Selma was his George Floyd moment, and he was very supportive of the current movement of Black Lives Matter. I think, one of his last public appearances was going down. Initially, he just did it from his roof, from his apartment, and looked out at the Black Lives Matter where it had been painted on Pennsylvania Avenue. But he actually went down there, and that was only 2 weeks before he died. So he was extremely ill at that point in time, but he felt it very important to make that statement that he supported the young people in the Black Lives Matter movement, and we were all moved tremendously by George Floyd.
What is something that people might not know about John that he liked or that he did, or something that only people that knew him could know?
John was he had an incredible collection of African-American art, from Romare Bearden's to, he just had, I guess it may have started back when he was in SNCC in terms of collecting art. There was a artist, Kofi Bailey, who did a lot of art for the movement posters and things like that, but he also did fine art, and John had several original Kofi Baileys in his home, and then he became an African American art collector, and I hope that one day people will get to see that, maybe in an exhibit, all the tremendous African American artists that he supported and promoted in his work. And then, of course, the children's book on John was illustrated by the great Benny Andrews, who was a wonderful, wonderful artist. And I encourage everybody to buy the children's book to learn John's story, but also to share it with the younger generation. And John was very much into using different media, using different ways to reach people. So he moved into the whole graphic novel thing, and he turned his story into a trilogy graphic novel in collaboration with some young people, and to try to get his story to a different generation. And so that's a great thing for young adults and teenagers, is looking at the story of the civil rights movement, and Selma in particular, through that trilogy. And it's called March, and you can get it, on Amazon or at your local bookstore. But it's just a small symbol of the ways that John tried to work with younger people and to translate the lessons of his past into things that would be useful for them today.
That is, first of all, very cool. He was just like, yeah, we're gonna do a graphic novel now. Kind of thinking ahead of just where we are right now, but who is going to be taking up the mantle after he's gone, and after, when new people come, and really making sure that everyone, not just the people that are his age, not just people that were there, but everyone has an opportunity to really understand how we got here.
Yeah.
That's really important, and I'm gonna have to read a graphic novel now. How would you want him to be remembered? Which is a big question, I know, but in your opinion, you knew him, you knew his family, you knew his wife. How would you want the world to remember him?
Remember him as a man who made a difference, a man for who was really, for whom ethics and morality was tremendously important, whose politics was informed by the need to make change for people's lives. I think that John was, he was an excellent politician. I mean, rising to be deputy whip of the U.S. Congress is an amazing story for the boy from Troy who started out preaching to chickens, but in his backyard. And to be at the point that he actually shaped and made major legislation for the whole country. It shows that anybody can make a difference. You know, everybody can't be John Lewis, but you can make a difference in your community. You can advocate for those things that are important, to right the wrongs, to change the behavior of police, to change the way we fund police, to change, to make sure that people still have the right to vote, and to end the voter suppression that's going on all around the country.
That was perfect. I think that he has left that legacy, and I think that, you know, people recognize that, and he truly is an inspiration to millions of people. I know my mom was like, people, you know, their lives, and they live, and then they die, because that's just how life works. But this one hit my mom, and a lot of people, everybody, just it hit different. It hurt different because of who he was, and the legacy and the mark that he left on this nation. So he will be remembered for a long time, and I am grateful to him. I know so many others are.
And learn more about John. I mean, see the movie, see read the graphic novel, get his autobiography, Walking with the Wind. It's got some tremendous stories in it. John was a great storyteller, you know, and for somebody who grew up with a speech impediment, he overcame that, and he worked very hard and became one of, you know, our very best speakers, and had an incredible way to personalize and tell his story. So I just encourage you to just learn more about John Lewis and what he stood for, and how he can inspire you to do more.
Absolutely. A message to me and all of our listeners out there. Go learn, go do, go change the world.
Yes.